Welcome into the Michigan State Hockey Hub halfway point of the year recap show. This is a show that's been a long time in the making, and I wanted to kind of do a longer format than usual. And to do so, I wanted to bring in two people that know a lot more about Michigan State hockey than I do. So I got the two gurus here, Jeremy Dewar and Nathaniel Bott. Guys, how are y'all doing?
Doing good,
Blair.
man.
How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. It's always tough to get Jeremy on the show. I like to have him on as much as possible, but with the kid, the family, the two jobs, the hockey, everything. It's always a great time anytime you can come on, Jeremy. So thanks. And everyone knows Nate by now. He's pretty much a bi-monthly guest at this point. So
Yeah, I'm a
Capital
lot
J,
more accommodating.
yeah, a lot more accommodating. That's right.
Capital J journalist over there. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, as we dive in, I just want to thank you all for joining me, especially for a longer episode. Like I said, we're probably going to go close to or just over an hour. So, um, appreciate you all carving time out. And as we get started, I just wanted to kind of go over some of the first half thoughts of this season. It started off in a way that I don't think a ton of people expected, right? I mean, this team has been playing very, very well. They're looking like and ranked in the pairwise top 10 around that area on, whatever ranking you decide to use. So, Jeremy, we'll start with you. What has been just kind of overall 10,000-foot view of this team through the first couple months?
man, I think no drop off like from the new coach bounce. I kind of felt like even under Cole some years they'd have like a couple weeks like that Bowling Green weekend was like, okay, we might even split that under, last year. And have like a good out of conference start, but it's this conference start that was like, okay, this is real. I have to, as I've been telling you, like I've had the break on all season. I had to kind of start releasing it. Like, okay, maybe this team could make a, an NCAA tournament in year one. I think the one that really gave it to me though was that Penn State series. Like, really, they were 5 minutes from a sweep. So,
Yeah.
like that was the series for me where it was like, okay, yeah, this is big turnaround. And I know that the guys have talked about they don't keep track of shots or have like a goal, but the fact that they were not getting outshot by 20 every night is a pretty drastic change too, right? So
It's refreshing to see just in terms of sitting down and watching a hockey game and enjoying that product. It's definitely a more aesthetically pleasing product and a more productive product as well. And Nate and I were joking about this before we hit live here that I was kind of in the same boat as you. Like, I've got to pump the brakes, man. I'm getting way too excited. And then I thought, it's been over a decade since I've been able to feel this, right? Like, screw it. I'm going to let myself feel all the emotions of it at the end of the day, especially with football not being what we expected it to be. I was like, screw it. I'm just pouring all of my emotions into hockey. Nate, your takeaways from the first half.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is just how much the guys who, especially the guys who are coming back from the Cole era, have really just grabbed on to Nightingale's style and have just ran with it. I mean, the offense, just the amount of shots that they're generating, the amount of quality chances they're generating. I think it's catching some teams off guard. I think, you know, at the start of the Big Ten, playing Wisconsin, Ohio State, I think that pace kind of threw them off a little bit, and they're like, "Hey, this isn't the Michigan State team that we've been playing over the last 2-3 years." But I think just everyone buying into Nightingale right away and what he's selling and the brand of hockey that he wants to play, I think it's really paid dividends, and obviously it's showing up in the Big Ten. I think, like Jeremy, even in the past couple years under Cole, they even last year they had a pretty good non-conference start. They head into the GLI with a little bit of momentum, and but then the Big Ten was just always too tough of a challenge. But it doesn't seem like too tough for this team, so I think that's been exciting for fans to see.
Yeah, absolutely. The wheels fell off last year, and I was getting excited as well. And we had some freshmen like Tucker and Gucci already looking good. I was kind of getting ahead of myself then. So, okay, well, we're going to dive into a bunch of different stuff tonight just to give everybody a rundown. It's going to be an overview, just a generic overview. We're going to get into coaching / team stats. We're going to get into each individual line, forwards and defense, goalies, the schedule, the second half, everything that you'll need to know in one spot. Before we get started, I do want to say a big thank you to Kelly and Sarah, who do photography and have given me permission to use their photos, which helps a lot with this. And I try to give them a lot of credit, but follow them. They do great work. I will say I try to use all of their photos for this. I couldn't find some, so the others will be from MSU Athletics, which I think Kelly is kind of responsible for the majority of those. So I'm going to give that one a pass. But let's go ahead and dive in to some of the team stats here. The power play is 19.7%. That's 32nd. Penalty kill, 85.1%. That's 9th. They have 4 sweeps so far. Wins over 4 ranked teams. They've already tied their 2022 win total, and it's middle of December. 8th in the pairwise and 11th overall ranking. Nate, why don't you take this forward? What do you think of the special teams so far with the power play at 19.7 and the penalty kill of 85.1?
Yeah, let's start with the kill there. I think this is part of another thing that Nightingale should get some credit for when he comes in and he doesn't look at any film, any game tape, any individual tape of anyone who was on the roster last year. You look at the penalty kill from last year; it's one of the bright spots. But you had Jagger, Joshua, and Nico Mueller were your top PK unit, and they were putting in long PK shifts, every time out. So, but neither of those guys are in the top PK unit this time around. He's been able to put a lot of different guys in that penalty kill and has found success in doing so. And you got guys like Jagger and Nico now who have a little bit more rediscovered roles. They're both on the first power play unit, contributing a lot more offensively. And I think that just getting a new set of eyes on some guys, talent and what they can do really helped. And as for the power play, I haven't been able to see much of it the last couple of weekends. Obviously the Minnesota series, no power plays for either side. But, I think both units are working okay. Obviously, you'd like a little more goal or a few more goals, but I think it's interesting too. You have a freshman in Matt Basgall, kind of operating, the point on that first unit. Maybe a spot that not a lot of people expected him to be at, this early in his career, but I think he's done a really good job kind of captaining that first unit for him.
Jeremy, your thoughts on the overall coaching staff so far through the first half?
Yeah, I mean, for me, PK is the one that I noticed I think the biggest stamp on, and I think Nate nailed it too. Like the old school style would be Jagger and Nico, like pull a couple of your third line guys that are defensively responsible, but not the quickest feet, not the fastest guys on the team. And I thought under the old PK, it was a much more of a shell, sit back, keep shots from the outside, get in the shooting lanes, but now they're all over it. Like I don't think they've popped enough shorthanded goals, but they're coming. They are extremely, and that's the big change, right? Like that's part of the more shots on net, more up tempo game that Nightingale's put in is they're all over teams now on the PK. Power play wise, I don't see a huge change. It's a pretty similar setup to what they had before, but I do I like using Basgall as the QB out there. I think he's made some mistakes with it, and he'll fully admit that he's made some mistakes. But I think that's one that's going to be a good jumping off point. Because I thought last year too often that position was going to a forward, who I just have a lot of issues with having a forward as your last line defense on the point for a power play, and I like what they've done. Kind of moving some guys around with that. But yeah, I mean. Nothing to complain about there. They've been on top of the special teams really well, and I'll take an 85 PK even if they don't move up. I'll take that, especially with the discipline they're playing with now, right? Like Nate said, I mean, they had a whole Minnesota series with no whistles, and if there should have been some, it wasn't on us. It was on Minnesota if you wanted to call some calls. So No complaints there.
Yeah, and I've also noticed, Nico has been a great piece on the power play as well, and he's been poised and seems to make the right read and right pass, and he's kind of coming into his own, right? He's looked so much better this year, and I think that maybe it was you, Jeremy, that just tweeted out just the way that he's been used and just the way that the coaching staff kind of saw him and said, okay, this is a guy who I think most fans kind of said he is what he is, right? After 3 years of not putting up double digit points, and now he's doing fantastic. So I love what I've seen. I think the coaching staff, when I think a lot of average fans or a lot of people that did not know a lot about Nightingale said, okay, well, it's the same path as Danton Cole. Like, what's different here? They need to hire somebody kind of more outside. And so far, it's looked great. And everyone I hear from, even opponents, I had a Michigan fan and a Minnesota fan and a few other schools even say, like, this is a home run hire. You all are on the great path, but best of luck along the way. I think that Michigan State's kind of getting that notoriety and respect that they had not had, honestly, the past few years from opponents. But I wanted to jump into the lines now, and we'll start with the forwards. We'll go ahead with line one here. Carson Dewar, Daniel Russell, Jagger Joshua. A line that, if you just told me this before the season, not knowing much about Dorward or Russell, I would have been kind of surprised, right? And I think we saw Jagger start on the fourth line the first game or two. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but um, and lines, the number of lines, I'm just going by the average of what we've seen on the line chart. It's changed a little bit and where they are, but this line's been great. Dort centers this line, a line of 7, 11, and 18 points for the freshman, 4 multi-point games, had a hat trick this year. Jagger Joshua really coming into his own offensively. 7-6 for 13 points. That's 7 goals and 6 assists. Hey, look at this. This is not a troll. This sounds like a troll, but I swear it's not. No penalties since he was scratched at Miami. No penalty minutes at all. He's been much better at that, and he had a hat trick this year, and he already has a career high in points. Daniel Russell, 6 goals, 13 assists, 19 points. Leads the team in points and has 4 multi-point games. Jeremy, take it away with line one.
Well, I think so. The nice mix of this line is like it's kind of a nice mix of the Nightingale experience, right? Like you have Jagger, who's an improved player under new coaching. You have Daniel Russell, who's a Cole commit, who I think has played to about what I would expect. He was always a goal scorer in junior. Like he had 2 20-plus goal seasons. I didn't know if he was gonna make that jump in college freshman year, especially he was the guy scoring goals early in the season. He's kind of honestly cooled off, but I know like those first couple weeks of the year, he had like 3 or 4 goals. Mm-hmm. And then you have Carson Dewar, who's one that he snagged as a recruit, I think like May or June, so it's kind of a nice mix of the whole Nightingale experience of like a guy who wouldn't be here in Dorwart and 2 guys who maybe are finding higher floors with him there. But it's just a nice like mix of talent and mix of like styles. Like Jagger is the guy who's going to make space for the other 2. But they're playing really well together. And I agree with you. I think Jagger started that fourth line. I want to say it was like him and Shouty and someone else at the beginning of the year. So he's shown some flexibility to move up and down. And we gotta say Carson got the Clay bump, right? Like we need you at more games, Clay, for the Carson hat trick bump. So
I know. Nate, your thoughts on the first line?
Yeah, well, like Jeremy said, you got Jagger in there to really clear space for the other 2, and I've been able to talk to Carson and Daniel quite a bit this season, and both those guys just absolutely rave about having Jagger on the line. Pretty much the perfect guy to pair with 2 pretty skilled forwards who are going to put a lot of shots on net. So I think it's been obviously a little bit of surprise seeing a late ad like Dorwart come in and produce the way he has been. I know, like Jeremy said, Russell was a goal scorer in USHL, but I wouldn't have pegged him as the team's leading point scorer heading into the GLI. And then, Jagger, like Nico, I mean, went through first 3 seasons, no season with 10 points. Nonetheless, getting 7 goals, and he's up to 13 points. So he's been able to find some newfound offense and kind of rediscover that a little bit. Reminds me a little bit of his brother at Ohio State. It's kind of just like a bruiser for his first 3 years, and then his senior year comes on, scores a bunch, and winds up in the NHL. So I'm not saying Jagger will be in the NHL, but just see that comparison. So, but the first line's been really impressive. I think this was actually the fourth line heading into the first game against Bowling Green. I think it was Jagger, Carson, and Russell, or at least heading into the national team exhibition game. But yeah, it's been really impressive from them.
I think Dakota Joshua, Jagger's brother, just had a hat trick in the NHL.
Yeah, he did.
last week, which he was always, like you said, kind of this version, like can score some, but still kind of a grinder and power forward. But yeah, Carson Dewar, the first time I saw him play, I was at Munn for the first game this season, and I tweeted out, like, this kid has some game to him. Like, he made a couple of high confidence moves that you don't see a lot of freshmen attempt or be able to do, and he did them, and I was kind of like, this guy has some skill here. Like, there's something here with this kid. So glad to see him, doing well on that first line. Moving on to the second line, Miroslav, Muka, and Nicholas Mueller and Jeremy Davidson. Now, Davidson last year was scoring, kind of one of the primary scorers on the team, right? 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points this year, but 5 goals in the past 7 games. All of the goals have come in the past 7 games. Maybe he's starting to heat up, would be huge for Michigan State in the second half. Mueller, like we said, career high. He has 3 goals, 15 assists, 18 points. Career high in points before this was 8. Oh my gosh. And the captain, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points, and only 2 penalty minutes. I saw that. There's a couple players with only 2 penalty minutes, but I wanted to throw that in as well. Nate, we'll let you go first this time.
Yeah, well, I know Nico's gotten a lot of those assists on power play and stuff, but he's just really been a different player. I don't know if it's the line comment, Nightingale's found something new in him, and he's really developed his offensive game, in particular his playmaking in terms of just finding the open guy. Didn't really do much of that, his first 2 years. He was more of a guy who's, looking to shoot or, looking to just park himself in front of the net and get some redirects. But as for Davidson, I think maybe the start of the season was a little rough for him. Like you said, he's got his 5 goals in the last 7 games, but I think kind of, last season being the guy and being on the line, the only line that was contributing, in the second half of the season, to now go with 2 new line mates. He's not on either power play unit. I think it maybe is a little tough for him to adapt, but he certainly, obviously found something here in the last 7 games. And then Muka he's just been solid. He's good with the puck on his stick. He's good at, keeping possession in the offensive zone. It's tough to bump off the puck, and just a good guy to pair with a guy like Davidson, who's always looking to shoot, and a guy like a playmaker now, a newfound playmaker in Nico Mueller.
Yeah, it's kind of like a plotting line a little bit. Like they're all deceptively quick, but not the quickest line you're going to see out there. And that kind of makes it interesting that Davidson gets 2 against Minnesota, right? Like that was a series where it looked like that was going to – I think that's why they had success, is they kind of alternated against Minnesota's speed with like their plotting, just like grinding down in 30 seconds, in the zone, finally breaking through on a goal. So Nico, Nico was a kid that, to be honest, I don't know if he was one that, as I was like sitting there in March last year, I'm like, this is the one that maybe enters the portal too, right? Like, and maybe he does if the current staff comes back, because he just needs a change of change of voice in his ear, or just something different. Like I thought he might be a portal kid, and now he sticks around and sticks through a new staff, and he's like, he's probably changing the outcome of what he might have expected if he wants a pro hockey career. Like, could always go back to Switzerland. He's got the citizenship. Like, I think that was always going to be there for him. But now I look at it like he could probably play somewhere higher up in Europe if he wanted to. Like, this is what we all thought we were getting like 4 years ago coming off the Swiss national team. So, and Muka's been, I mean, I think the story for him is you're a transfer captain. So I think that speaks volumes of just his presence and what he brings. Like, he's just steady. Like, just nothing phases him, even coming from Lake State, where maybe he didn't play this competition every weekend. But he doesn't look out of his depth at all.
One last thing on Nico too. There's a lot of guys, who get a little shy around the media, or, after practice, we request a couple players and they'll come over and be like, "Hey, what's up?" Nico, man, he's got a smile on his face every time. He is the happiest dude he's to talk to. Like, he's so happy whenever he talks to the media. It's like you can't get the smile off his face. There's nothing you could say to have him lose his smile. So just wanted to throw that in there too.
Yeah, man, it's the windsurfer in him, right? Like,
Yeah.
the Spartans all access to think about him being a windsurfer. That's the windsurfer in
dude.
him, right? He's just most chill guy in the room. So
For sure.
So as we move on to the third line, centered by Zach Dubinsky, no goals, 2 assists for 2 points, but a 60.6% face-off, leads all forwards in block shots with 13. Eric Middendorf, another player who, showed strides last year, got off to a slower start this year, 5 goals, 1 assist for 6 points. But 4 of those goals came in one game, which was just crazy. Justin Jalen, who has 1 goal, which was an empty net goal, 2 assists for 3 points, also tied for the lead in block shots. So more of a defensive line, Jeremy. I mean, what do we see here with this line? I know that they trust Zach Dubinsky on the dot, and you see him in big moments. But tell us a little bit about this third line.
I mean, so for Doobie and Jalen, like, those two guys are, to me, like, 100% can see that they were Cole grads out of the portal. And that does not mean that Nightingale doesn't like him or doesn't like him. But, I mean, they play the exact style that a Cole portal get would have been, right? Like, they're both at the top of block shots, extremely defensive. I think Middendorf, like, the points don't tell what he's doing. Like, I came away from that Minnesota series, especially the Friday night game, but really both nights, thinking that he was the best individual player on the ice for us. I know that weekend, I think the Shouty line as a line was probably the best, but I thought that Middendorf was just, even in the third period of, like, both nights as the score kind of slants away from him. Like, he was just, I mean, granted, I sit on that offensive zone for the third period, but I think Nate's right above me in that zone too. But, like, Mitty was in there, like, 2 checks every dump in on guys. He was just buzzing the whole night, but just wasn't their night to cause a turnover and get a point out of it. But I thought he was like the best guy there, and he's one that I've talked to a little bit about, like, the off-season conditioning and just where they're at. Like, I think he's going to be a guy, as you get towards playoff time, like, he's one that I think is going to come out a little bit. I think the points don't show it right now, but if they just keep playing the style they're playing, like, they're going to get some points coming here. Or, and not that I think we need to be line shaking up, but if he was on another line, maybe he has more points, because the work he's doing should probably be popping a few more goals for his line.
I don't even know if I need to say anything. Jeremy just hit it right on the head. I mean, Mitty's that series, he was the best guy on the ice for Michigan State, and I think I was kind of looking, they didn't really need to change anything up because they're obviously winning games and stuff. But I was thinking maybe Middendorf would find himself on a line with a couple more offensive skilled guys to get him some more opportunities, because he is a really gifted offensive player. I mean, he came in last year as, I think he was 3rd in the USHL in points, and so, I mean, he definitely has the skill. As for Dubinsky and Jalen, I think, like Jeremy said, they're definitely Cole grabs out of the portal. And, Dubinsky's obviously, they're grind guys, and Dubinsky's great in the circle. That's always a nice weapon to have, if you're looking late in a game where you're down by 1, other team's going for an empty net, they ice it, there's 20 seconds left, you need a face-off win. You can throw him in there as your 6th skater, and he'll get you one. So that could obviously be important down the line. But it's not the most offensive line, but I think they've shown some flurries every now and then where they've created some chances. Obviously Middendorf with his 4-goal game, but yeah, I mean it's Middendorf's been pretty good all year, and like Jeremy said, I think the stat line doesn't really reflect that, but I'm
Yeah,
sure
and there's
it'll be coming.
and right now, Michigan State has a good problem where they have players on the third and fourth line who have the ability to play up and the ability to score goals with some more offense. How many times did we see that in the past? It was not very often. So it's definitely been a blessing. And even this fourth line, and that I'm about to pull up here, this fourth line, quote unquote fourth line, Tiernan Shouty, whoever I want everyone to know, my wife went to her first game in 3 years at Miami, and she decided her favorite player was Tiernan Shouty because he was short and fast. So that's the criteria it takes now for Spencer to make you a favorite player. But Shouty, 4 goals, including that big game winner against Michigan, 4 assists for 8 points. Jesse Tucker got off to a really, really good freshman year. Has still been good in my eyes this season. The points aren't quite there. 4 goals, 3 assists for 7 points. And then Tanner Kelly, 4 goals, 10 assists, 14 points. Last year's line was 3, 2, and 5. And I kept coming on this podcast and kept saying Tanner Kelly has more offense in him. We're starting to see it. And we saw him on the penalty shot kind of flash some skill and on the shootout winner. Nate, take it away on the fourth line here.
Boy, this line has been buzzing the past 3 weeks. I mean, they don't get the results against Minnesota, but these guys were on it, and they were on it like crazy against Michigan and Mana last Friday. Tanner Kelly, I don't. He just has an engine that just keeps going. He just doesn't stop. He's a gym rat, and he just I don't think he gets tired, honestly. He is forechecking like crazy, and he just doesn't stop. And 4, 10, and 14. How long did it took him to the second half of the Big Ten season to get his first goal last year, I believe. So,
Ohio State, yeah.
he's found some offense, and as for your wife, Shotty's a good pick, man. He's he's another guy who's down the line. He's going to be a really good player for Michigan State. Come his junior and senior season, he's already showing, coming up big in clutch moments like that last Friday, and then Tucker's a great center to pair with these two guys, fast on the wings, and he's a guy who's going to be able to put the puck on their tape to set him up. He's a great playmaking center. So it's fourth line to name. I don't really think in Nightingale's Ed there's not a first, second, third, fourth line. I think he's just got 4 good lines, and this has certainly been, I think, probably the best over the last 3 weeks.
To say, you gotta tell Spencer I've got about 3 years on Shouty, but yeah, man, this is by far my favorite line, of course, because Tiernan's my Mitch Lewandowski replacement of the kid that I saw.
That was your last favorite player.
I know. Well, but just like Mitch, man, I saw him at 15 and knew right there. I was like, if he commits to MSU, that's the kid when he gets there. That's gonna be my favorite, and stuck with his commit, thankfully, and he's here and he's doing it. And I think for me on this line, Tanner last year, that's not his style. He runs his mouth and he loves getting into those dirty areas. But I think this is showing he had more offense than what he did last year. Again, kind of like the Middendorf thing, where I thought, he needs a line mate to help him do those things, and he just wasn't surrounded by people who could help him like that last year. And I think for Jesse, the biggest thing for me is, I know the points are down, but he just tried to do too much last year. Towards the end of the season last year, where he was on that line with Middendorf and Davidson, there were nights where he just had brutal giveaways at the blue line, or just little mistakes where you're Jesse, you can just tell he's starting to feel it. We're the only line that gets things done. And he just kind of forced it a little bit too much. And I think that this line has been nice because he's not making those mistakes anymore. A little bit, growth as a sophomore, but I think it's also now that he doesn't feel like this is the only line going, he's not forcing anything. So no, like Nate said, man, 3 weeks in a row. Last week, I know just because I wasn't at the rink and got to watch the game, like the Big Ten crew was all over them, calling them the best line like the entire night, both nights. So I think, they won't get treated like a fourth line anymore by opponents because they've been going. So I expect, and GLI, they definitely won't get away with it playing Tiernan's brother, so twin
Oh
brother.
yeah.
So they won't get away with that. But but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how teams adjust to them going forward because they're not going to get treated like a fourth line as far as who you put them out against anymore.
Moving on to the blue line, Cole Krieger, 5 goals, 2 assists for 7 points, career high in goals scored, by the way. 15 block shots, a +5, and my guy Michael Underwood, 2 assists on the year, 27 block shots, and a +3. I want to have you all talk about Cole Krieger, but I also want to I feel like the Twins get lumped together, and I feel like they've both improved enough that we can kind of talk about that together.
Yeah, Cole I don't know, Nate. I kind of felt like Cole's just picked up where he ended last year.
Yeah,
Like,
I
speaking
think
about
so. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking about like Tucker, like and how Tucker tried to do too much. Like I remember games the last, 6-ish games last year where it was obviously just a march to the end. But Cole was all of a sudden like out of nowhere. I just remember thinking like, who is this guy rushing the puck and where has this been for 4 years? Like he's below the goal line. What is he doing? Like I've never seen him, but he was just trying to force offense. And I think, to your point of Nightingale didn't watch game film, like, but I think Cole was like, well, he may not saw me do it last year, but I'll just keep doing it. And it's been same thing this year. Like there's nights where I see him, I'm like, he's below the goal line again on a rush and stays on the forecheck. So yeah, he kind of, to me, he's picked up where he left off. And I think he's actually separated himself a little bit from Christian as far as improvement goes. And Underwood was like one, like, I think like if Miro's not here, maybe he's the transfer captain because he's just so steady. Like he's just so smooth and really underrated. It's going to be kind of a shame that he only gets 1 year here because he is probably going to get really underrated by fans. But a pretty big part of the rebuild, I think, is just someone coming over from Clarkson that has played playoff hockey, has won before, and he's relaxed. This doesn't faze him at all.
You don't notice him a lot if you're just like, turn on the TV and watch without, paying much attention. And that's like the best compliment to give a player like him, right? Like if I'm just a casual fan, I might not even know who Michael Underwood is besides, oh yeah, I know 22 because he doesn't show up in a bad way and he's not putting up a ton of offense, but he's so damn steady. And it's exactly what this team needed. Jeremy and I were talking back in the spring when all these transfers were going out. We're like, Michigan State doesn't have enough men to be on the blue line right now. Like, what are we have to get some experience. It's all these inexperienced players. And Michael Underwood committed, and I was like, hell yeah. Here's a guy with 120 plus college hockey games under his belt. And I like what I've seen. But I said I wouldn't talk too much, and here I am talking a lot. So, Nate, steal the mic from me.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, he's not a guy you're going to notice, but the guys you notice are making flashy plays or they're making bad turnovers. And, Underwood doesn't do either. But, yeah, he's just rock solid on the back. And like Jerry said, nothing really phases him, He's been dealing with, lines forechecking him at the college level for, like you said, 120 plus games. So, he's kind of seen it. He's used to it, and he knows what the right decision is. And as for Cole, I think Cole's been awesome. I think he's been one of the most he picked up from where he was last year, but just to keep it going for the whole first half of the season, I think he's been one of the most improved guys overall. And he's staying pretty disciplined too, which we haven't been able to say about either Krieger guy for his 4 years. So he's showing up on the offensive end, and I think he's been really sound defensively too. So I think on the blue line, he's been really good for him, and really that deep pair has been, I think, by far the most solid, in terms of defensively, holding things down. And then, obviously Cole can jump in on the rush. But, yeah, they've both been really good.
All right, moving on to the D pair number 2, David Gucciardi, who had missed some time with the injury in the beginning of the year. 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points, 26 block shots, plus minus a 0. My guy Matt Basgall, the freshman, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points, leads the team with 32 block shots. And I met Matt's dad at a B-Dubs with Tanner Kelly's dad in Bowling Green, Ohio, and talked to him for like an hour. Then I ran into him again at Miami, and both times I saw him, I just had to tell him, I was like, dude, I love the way your son plays. I love the way he moves the puck. I just blocking shots. Like he's had a couple of huge plays. I remember the very first game of the year, him getting his pass or his stick in a shooting lane and then back in a passing lane. Like it was just incredible what he was doing for a freshman. Jeremy, I know that you and I talked about Basgall a lot before he came into to Michigan State, so I'll let you go first here.
Yeah, there's behind the scenes, anyone that opens up their DMs to me they move right up the list. So I gotta talk them up, right? But no, Basgall's been great. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Tucker in a way. Like he's had some mistakes where you're like, all right, a little bit of a freshman move, a little bit trying to do too much. You're not in the USHL. They will make you pay for this here. But yeah, like this is like an explosive D pair to me, right? Like I don't know how you kind of forecheck it because either one of these guys can be the one to take it up on the rush. Like you kind of got to watch both. And Gucci, like I think it was mono or something like that early in the year, and it took him a little while to get back into it when he came back, but he's really had a good couple weeks here. It's just, I wouldn't want to forecheck against these guys because I feel like if I get my stick in the wrong place or I take a wrong angle on them, here goes a 4-on-2 the other way. Like either one of these guys could just burn us. It's a fun one. Like they're an explosive pair out there, like good or bad, but more good than bad so far.
Yeah, I mean Basgall's been terrific. We touched on him, being the quarterback of that top power play, and he's had a few freshman moments, but for the most part, he's been really good. And that philosophy of getting pucks on net. I mean, he's always ready to shoot, and he's been a really welcomed addition as a freshman. And then as for Gucciardi, coming into the year, it's going to be tough, especially with the training regimen that these guys are on now. They're doing a lot, and for him to miss pretty much a month with mono, including a good stay in the hospital for it, it's going to be tough to jump in and really get to where he was at a point last year. He's had moments where he's been good, and obviously he's always a threat to join in on a rush or like Jeremy said, if you forecheck Ron, he can make you pay and start something up. And he's obviously got a great little toe drag shot, either from coming in from the point, in the slot. But I think he's struggled a little bit, defensively. I'm sure he'd be the first to tell you that he's not playing, up to what he believes he can. But I think, he was, a drafted player, the only drafted player from Michigan State the last, 3 years. So, he's obviously got the talent to turn things around for him. And I think MSU will hopefully, see that from him.
Not to look too far ahead there, Clay, on that, but either one of these guys next year, Nate, with like Maxim Strabeck coming in, that is going to be exciting. You made me think of it with your back getting
there. We're gonna leave a cliffhanger. We'll talk about that in the end a little bit. We'll talk a little bit.
Jumping the gun, Jamie. Come on.
I missed the pre-show.
Well, I know once we go down that road, we're not coming back. So
nope.
Nash, Christian Krieger, Nash 2 goals, 11 assists, 13 points, leads Blue Liners in points, 12 block shots, a +7. Christian Krieger, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points, 9 block shots. Did miss a little bit of time recently and just came back. Nate, we'll let you go first here. Yeah,
I think Nash has been good. I think he's definitely off the ice. I think he's been one of the main guys who's really gotten some guys to buy into what Nightingale wants to do, and especially in the weight room and stuff. He's a gym rat, and he's really getting guys to take care of their bodies, and it's showing. Look how good Michigan State's been in third periods this year, and at times looks like their opponent's gas, and they just have another gear. So, but I think he's been pretty sound defensively, and obviously, he's the quarterback of the second power play unit that's been maybe not as effective, but obviously has less run too. So, but I think he's been good. And then, like you said, Christian Krieger's missed a good chunk of time. But I think he's been kind of not to the extent of Cole, but there's flashes where he's got the puck behind his own net and he comes out and he just goes coast to coast, and all of a sudden he's behind the opposing net, creating offense. So I think both of them have a little bit of that in their game. But I think he's been pretty good too. I see him fall down a lot less, and he keeps the puck on his stick a lot more this year. So that's been a good sign. But
yeah, I was gonna say that's if I had to do most, he's probably the guy I like the most on the blue line, like improvement wise, because he was like hot and cold last year. Like when he was bad, it was really bad. Like you said, to your point of falling down or like giveaways, it was like when Nash wasn't on, it was really bad last year. So I see like I don't love the plus minus stat in general, but you think about it, at +7 is a pretty big jump from where I think obviously the team's doing better, so everyone's plus minus should be taking a better jump. Like you said, I mean, he's on the second power play unit. That doesn't help your plus. So, he's out there for creating, and he's really not out there for goals against this year. So pretty big jump, because he was one that I was just like so frustrated with last year, not because I thought he wasn't good, but I was like, I know you're way better than this, and this is brutal. When the mistakes you're making are just brutal. And he's not doing it this year. To his credit, he's dialed in way more. So,
Jeremy, if you would entertain us here and give us an idea of what your plus minus would be in your beer league team.
Oh, brutal, dude, brutal. It's bad. It is not
Is your
good.
plus minus number higher than the amount of beers consumed?
Well, it has to be. It's a minus most nights. So most nights it's a minus. I mean, we don't get a lot of wins. So yeah, it's not good. Not good. So, no comment.
A few other players that I've seen some time today, and we're not going to dive too deep into these. We'll talk about Victor Hertig, but the others have kind of been in and out of the lineup. I did forget to put Gavin Best. Congrats to Gavin making his first start of the year, and I thought played well.
Robbed of a goal. He had that goal, man.
He had that goal. What was it? Like a stick that blocked it? It was like an open net. I think, yeah. So unless you all want to talk about any of these other players, let's dive into Hertig, and I'll let Jeremy go first.
I mean, just before, I do want to give a shout out to Cal Divitz playing a little early with what was the one night that we had no Christian or no
no Hertig.
Yeah, no Christian and Gucciardi. Yeah, and I saw him and I remember being like a little bit upset where I was like, how was he the only guy scratched last year? Because he actually played pretty damn well, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. He could have played some of those games down the stretch last year, but no, man, Victor's been, I think it's pretty obvious he's probably got to just get to adjusted to the North American game. So I think it'll come for him. Like, he's got a ton of talent, you can see it, but I think he's having some adjustment here, which we talked a lot about Nico, right? Nico had the same thing, but I don't think Victor's going to take 3 years. I think he'll get there this year, but catching up to some of the physicality of even playing men's pro in Sweden compared to what the physicality he's going to get in the Big Ten is way different. So I think he's one that I just got to see him adjust a little bit more, but pretty high ceiling on him next year, especially with the Twins gone and things like that. Like, he's going to have a big role to step into, but it's going to come a little bit slower.
Yeah, like Jeremy said, I think it's an adjustment period for him. He has the talent. He certainly has the the frame and 6'7", and you know, he's another guy who's got a lot of offense in him, you know, from as a defenseman, but I think it's just going to be a little bit of wait and see. But he has a really high ceiling, and you know, next year with both Kriegers and Underwood gone, he's going to find himself in a pretty substantial role on the blue line.
As we move over to the goalies here, Pierce Charlson, who we saw quite a bit over the past couple of years, only one game this year, 4.01 goals against and a 8.52 save percentage. And then Dylan St. Cyr, the transfer. Everyone, he's too small. He's too this, that, the other. I love what I've seen. He's 11-7, 2.43 goals against, a 9.25 save percentage. And everybody, drum roll, the team MVP. Yay! Jeremy and Nate, I asked them both for team MVP and most improved, and they both landed on Dylan St. Cyr as the team MVP. And, you know, in terms of my mediocre graphics, I was proud of this one. So, Nate, how about if you start us off? What have you seen from Dylan St. Cyr this year?
Well, the team's certainly not in the position that they're in without him. He's been really fantastic, and it was kind of a question mark for me coming in. You know, with he has 4 years in Notre Dame, redshirts a year. He's stuck behind Cale Morris for 2 years, and then his 1 year at Notre Dame was a little iffy. Then he goes to Quinnipiac, and you know it looks like he's going to be either goalie one or just even split, and you know their other guy just gets hot and he finds himself on the bench, you know, for most games. So I was interested to see. I was honestly thinking heading into the year that, you know, the non-conference would be one St. Cyr, one Charleston, and by the time Big Ten play rolls around, you know, this coaching staff will have a look at both guys and they'll have, you know, which one they want to go with as a starter. But he's gone out and he's earned it, and yeah, I think it's a credit to Michigan State's, you know, defense in the way that, you know, a lot of the opposing shots are coming from the outside and coming from, you know, not great angles, and, you know, they're keeping everything. They're not giving up a whole lot of grade A's that St. Cyr has to stand on his head to save. But, you know, you look at Friday night, I mean, that Michigan game, that Michigan has 3 chances there on that power play in the second that, I mean, he's lunging across the crease to make a save. And, you know, he's done that quite a few times this year. So he's been really, really good. And, yeah, like I said, Michigan State's nowhere near where they're at right now without him in that.
Kind of a nice nice narrative for him to end, right? Like, I mean, he gets to come in here after Drew DeRitter, who Michigan went after real hard, and only went to Dylan after, you know, because Dylan was a Michigan commit, and only opened it up to Dylan after Drew commits here. And then he ends up at Notre Dame, and like you said, just kind of just like bad luck. Like at Notre Dame, it's expected he's going to be the guy, and then an upperclassman takes off in Cale Morris. Then he has the opposite at Quinnipiac. Like a kid comes in and just absolutely gets hot behind their defense, which is going to make any goalie look great, usually at Quinnipiac, and never gets in. So my expectations were pretty low, and like I'm a pretty big Charleston fan. Like I watched him a lot, and in his years up in Canada playing in Brooks, it's just a team I have to work with a lot. And so I saw a lot of him in Brooks and thought, you know, I was with you, Nate, like I thought it's going to be one's a Friday guy, one's a Saturday guy, and see who gets the Friday nod at the first Big Ten game. But yeah, even Pierce is one night in, unfortunately, like, you know, it's always hard. I don't think he's the guy that's used to being sat that long. So don't want to take a ton out, but he comes in and gives up 4 to Long Island, and it's like I don't know if we're going to see him again this year. Maybe at GLI, maybe, depending on how it goes. But you know, like maybe if you lose to Pierce, maybe he plays the consolation, I guess. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But on the positive side, like Dylan has absolutely gone out and grabbed it. It's he's earned every start, and really gotten better as it's come on. Like he was giving up, you know, 2 to 3 most nights, and they've really locked down. Again, outside of the Minnesota series, which I wouldn't put any of that on Dylan. You know, I think 4 breakaways They just kept beating us with long passes for breakaways. He just, that's a team that finishes every breakaway right now. So they did to Wisconsin last week too. So yeah, he's been awesome. You talk about Dylan all day.
Yeah, absolutely. But I imagine if I were to actually go and like get first half MVP trophy and mail it to Dylan St. Cyr, what he would think of this, like, oh, this podcast with 60 people that watch it gave me an MVP trophy. Thanks so much. But
I hope he steals that as his autograph there. Very, very nice. He'd have a career in like doing wedding invitations if that
it's fantastic. It's amazing what a very unskilled Canva person can put together in about 5 minutes. So Jeremy's most improved player, Jagger Joshua. Yay. Jagger Joshua just has really, really looked great this year. He's starting to finish more, and I always thought the issue I had with him in the past was that he held onto the puck too long at times, and that's probably something he got away with more in when he was younger because of his size and his kind of ability to just hold on to the puck longer. Really looks like a different player that this season. Love what I'm seeing from him. Jeremy, tell us why he's your most improved player.
I mean, one, this is the type of player that I'm always going to gravitate towards. So when he makes any improvement, it's a times 10 for me. But no, like it's similar to what I was saying about Cole Krieger. Like I remember games at the end of last year just thinking like there's Jagger's like one of the like 4 guys going right now. Like this team is finishing out the season, but Jagger, like he kind of impressed me, but then I was like, I don't know how he's gonna respond to a new staff. Like it could have gone either way. Like he seems like I've heard interviews with him, he's a very calm kid and seems really together, but I also could just see like, maybe again he needs a fresh start, needs to be somewhere else or just kind of finish his senior year. And to the new staff's credit, like he's not used in the same role he was before. Like we touched on with like he's not on PK anymore. He's on a different role. He does a different thing, and it's totally bringing out the best player in him. So yeah, he's been great. And also like to this staff's credit, I don't think he sits that Miami game last year. Right? Like, everything's the same. Like nobody sat because they took too many penalties. Like we didn't have the depth. They didn't recruit enough guys to allow you to sit guys. And he responded really well to that. Like especially to have it be the game after he goes and does a national story about what happened with Ohio State to like, there's a lot of guys who would have sat that Friday and been like, what is this? Like I just did this big thing and I'm getting sad and I, kind of go in the tank over it. And he's responded like no penalty sense. And he, even like last week, right? Like Michigan, no one would have faulted him to go after that guy after getting a cross check to the neck. But nope, just shrugged it off. Just go back to the bench. It is what it is. So I love seeing it for him too. Like, and I just think that he's such an interesting story with all that's happened and 3 years under Cole, and I'm kind of excited to see how that line stays together here. And he could put up a lot of points, going in and just getting that secondary assist for a Dorward or Russell goal.
Yeah. Nate, your most improved player, Tanner Kelly. Yeah. Woo! Take it away, Nate. Tell us why.
First of all, I swear I'm not trying to make a narrative here. I know I picked him as most improved on the preseason show with you.
You did, and I want to say this is my fault. I promised to Nate I would go back, find that clip, and give him praise. And I just had too much going on this week to do it. And I was hoping that you wouldn't mention it actually, but here we are.
Finding Nate's good takes is not hard to do. There's just a pile. So
yeah,
he's just used to them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Tanner. I think a lot of it is just the system change. I think being in, a more shot-heavy offense has just done wonders for him. And, he's even this 4-10 stat line. It feels like he should have 8 or 9 goals at this point. I mean, he's really been attacking the net, and he's been I think putting him with a playmaker like Jesse Tucker, and then having another fast forward on the other wing with Shouty, I think the line's perfectly made. And he's just been, I think he's just been really, really solid. And he's had an opportunity to show his skill, especially with that shootout goal. That was a pretty impressive move he put on there. So I think he's been really good. And I think just this, again, the strength and conditioning, man, he's in the gym a lot, and I really don't think he gets tired. He's got, I think that's maybe the biggest jump for him. I think he wasn't maybe in the right system, but he was consistently on his line last year's, the first guy going in on the forecheck, and he was going to the bench, pretty quick, and now it looks like he could just pull a Jack Hughes and play 6.5 minutes and be fine. So, he's been, I think he's been really impressive, and I think it's just only going to continue.
Yeah, he's really, really been great. And no graphics for mine. Nico Mueller, most improved. And the ultimate cop out, no one found the loophole. Team MVP, Coach Nightingale. Boom. Walking into the Big Ten standings here, you have Minnesota on top, Penn State second, Michigan State third, Ohio State fourth, Michigan fifth, Notre Dame sixth, and Wisconsin seventh. We'll just talk about kind of the top. And I don't remember who it was. It probably was Nate on a show with me earlier this year. And we kind of put these teams in tiers because that's what really matters, right? Is where do you fit in a tier? And Michigan State was near that bottom tier with Wisconsin. And like, okay, maybe you have a chance to play up if everything goes right into the second tier with kind of like the Ohio State, Notre Dame type tier, Penn State. And right now, I mean, they're in third place. And I know that Michigan hasn't played as many games, right? And it might look a little bit different, but they just went toe to toe with Michigan and beat them once. And I don't want to walk through every team here. We don't have the time for that. Plus, I want to give a little bit of time at the end for you all to do a little bit of recruiting talk. I know that's Jeremy's wheelhouse, especially. So, but just how do you think this will end if you had to predict?
Man, if you go tiers, like Minnesota's their own tier, right? Like there's no one touching that.
Right.
But I think we're now like, I would put us like with the Penn State and Michigan in the second tier. I think Ohio State's going to fade. Like from that series of us seeing them, like that road series doesn't scare me at all. That was a pretty thorough sweep. Like when we beat them up here, I guess they could get hot or figure some things out. They've played a little bit better the last couple of weeks, but yeah, man, I'm just frustrated we didn't sweep Notre Dame, to be honest. Like that team has been so brutal this year, but it's kind of like my thoughts. And everyone knows my agenda. Wisconsin needs to have a job posted soon.
But. Yes, you've made that very, very clear. I am 2-0 this year when attending road games, and I will be at Ohio State guaranteed sweep. Nate, how do you see it shaking up?
Yeah, like Jeremy said, I mean, Minnesota's in a tier of itself. I mean, they're going to win the Big Ten, I think, pretty handily. I'd put Michigan State in that second tier with Michigan and Penn State. I think Penn State might fall off a little too. I know that their style is to score a lot. But I'm still not completely sold on Slier and that there. Ohio State. MSU, a pretty thorough sweep at Munn. Only issue with Ohio State is, I mean, if Dobish can get hot, I mean, I still think he's, arguably the best goaltender in the Big Ten. So, he hasn't really had a game this year where he's like kind of just put the team on his back and stopped, 45 shots, and Ohio State's able to hang on to win. So, that could obviously be coming for them. And then, yeah, obviously, Wisconsin's bottom of the barrel, and Notre Dame, really, really hard time scoring, outside of one game against Michigan State. But yeah, they've been pretty disappointing too. But if I had a big finish, I'd say Minnesota, Michigan probably up there too, and then Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State in that 3 to 5 mix.
Okay. So we've gone through the first half. We've recapped just about everything, which is great. Just going to ask for a few more minutes of your time as we hit exactly 1 hour. Just wanted to take a peek into the second half. You have the GLI on the road against Ohio State. And then you have Penn State, Minnesota, Notre Dame, Michigan, Wisconsin, Big Ten tournament, right? I love the Wisconsin series at the end. Just because if it came down to a situation where you may need to pad a few points, that's the team in the Big Ten that you'd like to have that opportunity to do it against. Of this schedule, how do you, when you take everything into considerations, how do you think it's going to turn out for Michigan State? Do you think the end could be NCAA tournament? Do you think it's here? I want to rephrase that. What do you think the goal is at this point of the season, where they are realistically NCAA tournament, win a Big Ten tournament game, which they've never done? What is your all's goal for the second half? And we'll let Nate start.
Yeah, well, I think it's certainly in the possibility that, I mean, if you're sitting 8th in the pairwise heading to GLI with, you look at their schedule where everyone in the Big Ten except Wisconsin's in the top 19 in the pairwise. Like, even if you split a series with Notre Dame, like that loss might not really, affect you too much. Obviously, the Wisconsin series at the end will, unless Michigan State goes on an absolute tear and, wins most of their remaining games, that'll be a really important series. And I think, this Ferris State game is going to be a really important game in terms of that pairwise. But it's certainly possible. I mean, they're sitting in third, and, you get Penn State at home, in the second half. You look at your road series, Minnesota is obviously going to be extremely difficult, but you swept Ohio State and you swept Wisconsin. You play those two on the road, and you don't have to play at Yost again. So, and especially that Ohio State series too. I mean, you're going into that. Who knows what that's going to feel like? Who knows what that's going to, I mean, they have a player dismissed for using a racial slur against, a Michigan State player. Who knows what that atmosphere is going to be like in that building, in that series. So, certainly possible to make the NCAA tournament. I think the ceiling for them would, if they're able to finish in that top 4 in the Big Ten, they can host a Big Ten tournament series. That is huge. I think, not even won a Big Ten tournament game to go from in year one to finish in the top 4 in the Big Ten and host. I think that'd be really monumental for the program.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was my big goal was, NCAA tournament. I'm treating it like gravy, and we've seen too before, like year one of Anastas. I don't think this would be the same way, but year one of Anastas, Torrey Krug dragged a team to the NCAA tournament that didn't signal that things were okay, right? So I think that for gravy, and I think for the big narrative to get excitement around the program, maybe from the non-hockey crowd, like that would be huge. But I'm with Nate, like, even under the end of the cool years, is like improvement to me is you got to host a playoff series, not even just win a game. If you can play well enough all season to host one, that's huge. And we haven't done that in a long time. So, yes, I think that's like the big draw. And looking ahead schedule wise, it's avoiding, like, the things that scare me is a loss to Ferris State this week, like coming up at GOI, or a loss to Wisconsin, because like Nate said, everyone else, even at GOI this week, I mean, Michigan Tech is 16th in the pairwise, so losing to Tech or Western Michigan at GOI is, you can manage that. You just really can't take that Ferris loss. That's going to be one that would actually hurt your pairwise as you go forward. But I mean, you could lose a lot of games down the stretch here and barely move, just because that's how loaded the conference is.
Yeah.
Also, too, just a note on the schedule. You look, that first half they had to go back-to-back road series against Penn State and Miami. I mean, they won 3 or 4, and 5 minutes away from winning all 4. But this time around, you don't have a back-to-back road series. I think their first bye comes before going to Minnesota, if I'm right. Or it might be before hosting Notre Dame, and that'll be really interesting too. That last weekend against Wisconsin, and Michigan State's done, everyone else is playing that next weekend. So Michigan State will know exactly where they'll be at in the standings, how many points they'll have. And then, for Michigan State fans, if they need potential rooting interest, if MSU's sitting in third or fourth in the Big Ten and they need Notre Dame to win 1 or 2 against Penn State, then you have a little rooting interest the next weekend too. So
I like that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
So I'm going to put a time limit on this because I know how Jeremy can get. But I want to give Jeremy the floor for about 3 or 4 minutes to just give us a generic recruiting update on, I don't even care which kids you talk about. You can talk about whichever ones you want to. Give us whatever you want, and then we're going to throw it over to Nate for 3 or 4 minutes as well.
Yeah, I think the big thing right now is they've got 4 kids have signed their letter of intent, 2 defensemen, 1 forward, and a goalie. I think the biggest name is the goalie, Trey Augustine, just because you flip him from Michigan, and he's also in the NTDP. He's at World Junior Camp right now. I haven't seen him get cut yet. I don't expect him to make the team, being the 18-year-old there, but I would expect at his time at MSU, he will probably play in the World Junior. So I think like those 4, and then the latest commit is probably the one I'm the most excited about that's going to come in, I think, next year is Max Stravic, as I kind of got a little early on. That I know Nate's got some good information on, so I'll save that for him. But the other one is the other player that I'm excited about that fans will have no idea what they're getting, even myself in a way, because he's not in the USHL where I can easily watch him, is Tommy Monisto from Finland. And I'm really looking forward to the World Junior because I probably get to see him play. But he's got, just look it up real quick where I'm at. He's got, playing in, a 20 and under league. He's got 23 points in 33 games last time I looked. So he's played a ton of games up with kind of like Victor has done, where he's played with older groups, and he's going to be a big part of the Finnish team here for World Junior. So that'll be super interesting for my Christmas break, where I already love the World Junior as it is. It's like my holiday. But,
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
You still have 2 minutes.
Oh man, making
Come on, Jeremy.
I think the thing is, and Nate and I were texting about this. We've had some movement on it this week. Is I'm waiting to check in line charts every week to see who's dropping off.
Tell us about the most recent one that we saw come yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, so I think Arvega Havsepian was a commit under Danton Cole. Really hasn't. I mean, he committed, then he was a healthy scratch most of the season in Tri-City last year. So it was always kind of a curious commitment. Already been traded once in the USHL and actually got demoted to the BCHL this year. And I just noticed, I think they had a game last night in Wenatchee, and he no longer had the MSU logo on his line chart. So that's going to be kind of what I'm paying attention to the second half of the season, because I think right now we've got about 20 – let me see here, about 26 kids, 25 kids committed, and that's way too many over the next 2 to 3 classes to actually bring
long
in.
right now.
It is, and I know from talking to some coaches, I know the coaches are on the road this week, and it's not just looking at younger kids this week. They're looking at kids for next year. So I expect some movement to really start to happen with figuring out the last couple slots for guys to sign in the spring window.
Nate?
Yeah, well, and Jeremy, feel free to cut in here too. I know it's one you said you're really excited about, but yeah, Max Stravic, playing for Sioux Falls. He's only been in the U.S. for about 4 months, but I'll have a story coming out on him in the LSJ tomorrow, and I mean, if you want a ringing endorsement, I was telling Clay this, before I talked to Ryan Crothers, who's assistant in Sioux Falls, and I mean his sheet goes down the line of, assistant coach in the ECHL and the NAHL, head coach in the USHL, GM, a director of scouting, all over the place. And he's just like, I asked him, where does he stack up in maybe some of the guys you've seen? He's like, I haven't seen anyone like him. He's by far and away the most talented world-class talent he's had, in coaching. So, I mean, he's going to be exciting to see. You know, he's a 6'2", 188. He's physical, but you know, he's got a really gifted offensive game too. And you know, it's really impressive for for a kid coming in. He's like I said, he's only been in the United States for 4 months, and you know, after talking with him and talking with his coaches, you know, he's like one of the leaders in that locker room. And Sioux Falls, just 20 games in, I mean, he's playing with guys who've been there for a couple years now, and you know, people, you know, everyone on the team's just kind of gravitating towards him, you know, just because of the talent that he is. And you know, like Jeremy touched on, you know, imagine seeing Gucciardi or Basile next year next to him. I mean, that is a devastating deep air, to say the least. So.
And the thing that jumped out for me when I was watching him is like you can't give him three feet. Like he gets his shot off so quickly. You give him 2 or 3 feet and he's ripping it, and it's hitting it where he wants to go. And I wouldn't be shocked. I think Central Scouting had him probably in the second or third round kind of thing, but Central Scouting is always a little early on their preliminary like rankings. I would expect at the like mid-season rankings, he might be more of a sure thing first rounder for them. Because I know like the guys that I trust the most, like Pronman at the Athletic and other guys, like they're putting him in that 20 to 25 range. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Prominent had him 27. So
yeah. And Carruthers is great. Yeah, I can back up Nate on that. Carruthers is like that dude knows what he's talking about. That guy is he has been all over junior hockey. Yeah, he has. He's seen a lot of guys come through, and for him to say that, like those junior coaches are not. I think people get used to like high school recruiting and like a football or basketball, and like those guys, you might have unless you're a powerhouse, like you might have one D1 player every couple years, right? So they're always like effusive with their praise of their guys. But if you're coaching the USHL, like every one of your guys is going D1, and you have some guys that are going to go NHL like every season. So you don't have to be effusive with your praise. You can just be legit and just say, here's what he does well, here's what he doesn't do well. But for him to go out like that, like that's pretty big praise. These guys don't love to heap it on their guys. So and it doesn't make a difference for them. Like they're not recruiting, so it doesn't make a difference for them to heap big praise on him just to try and get like a commit next year. Like that says a lot for him to go out like that. So
thank you so much for sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, like Crothers said, he's the focal point of their power play. He's on first guy over the boards on the penalty kill, and he's the guy 5-on-5 who wants the log and the most ice time. So, I mean, and then you look at his first shot in the USHL, 3.5 minutes in. Like you said, Jeremy, he's at the right point. Defender backs off a little bit. He just shoots one, boom, goal. First shot of his USHL career for a goal. So, yeah, he's gonna be real exciting to see next year for Michigan State. Yeah, as an 18-year-old, he'll be coming in. So,
yeah, and you had Patrick Geary scoring a OT goal where he's on a breakaway as a defenseman. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot of offensive defensemen to watch here. Like that's the thing I'm seeing the most is just like that. But as much as we love what Cole has done, like right, Cole Krieger improving and stuff, like I don't think we're gonna have a lot of. We're gonna maybe have like a Michael Underwood every year, like one guy like that, but. Pretty soon here, they're going to have 6 offensive defensemen. Like they're going to be tough to keep off the score sheet.
Well, thanks for the detailed outlook on him, Nate. So now we don't have to read the article tomorrow, right?
I left out so much of it's in the article.
I'm just joking, man. I'm going to link that article tomorrow.
Did you have a Slovak interpreter for you?
Well, guys, I won't take up any more of your time. We're at an hour 15. That's about what I wanted it to be. I really appreciate you all coming on here and lining up your schedules to make this work.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, man. Thanks for having us on.
Awesome. Well, you all have a great holiday.
You too.